Oh, it's 11.
Oh, look at that. Hello, everybody. See if this thing works. It's our very first stream ever on Roll for Combat with myself and Mark Seifter. It's Mark's second day on the job. Look at that. How about this for a second
Oh,
day?
it's
You're
11.
you're live o'clock. Look at that. Hello, everybody. See if this forgot to turn off the sound on the monitor. Mark, how are you doing today? Mark, can you hear me? I guess Mark cannot hear me. Mark, can you hear me? No, you can't
Steven,
hear
I
me.
can't hear you.
Oh,
Can
look at
you
that.
can everyone on the stream hear me?
Oh, no.
I
Technical
cannot hear you,
problems.
Steven. Something is a little odd here.
Can you hear me now? No.
Oh, I hear you now. I hear you
Okay.
now.
All right.
I hear you now.
That was strange. All I did was touch something, so that was bizarre. All right.
Okay, well, I now hear Steven.
Yes, finally. Okay. Take two. Hey, everyone. Welcome to a stream. It wouldn't be a stream if there wasn't technical problems. And being in technology, you think I would have tested this beforehand. But I didn't, because that's how confident I was. And my confidence was misplaced. I was saying before, this is your second day, Mark. How about that? Your second day
Yeah.
already on a stream. How does it feel?
Well, I mean, I guess I was expecting to be on the stream today anyway for Arcade Mark, so it feels similar but different, and I'm excited about this new stream that has no name, and to talk about what is game design.
That's right. Well, let's see what it is. It's originally we don't have a name, so we were gonna call it. I just came up with Gaming Steve and Arcane Mark talk about gaming or discuss gaming because way before back in the dinosaur times, literally like almost 20 years ago, I had a very popular podcast called Gaming Steve, and you have Arcane Mark, and I was like, what's the chances that we both have nicknames with our names in it? So it's like Gaming Steve and Arcane Mark, and it's kind of like Batman and Robin. It's kind of cool, but people didn't seem to like that one. So if you guys have better ideas for a name, please let us know because the thing is, all the good names are pretty much taken, and it's got to be something not too inside because a lot of people are trying to use Battle Zoo, and that's not terrible. But the problem with using Battle Zoo is like no one might know what it is. So I don't know if I want to use Battle Zoo or someone had Crit Happens, which is was a joke, but actually some people seem to like. But I think it's too jokey. Um, let's see. Roll for Conversations wasn't terrible, but we'll see. Anyhow, the
I
point.
saw Roll for Podcast somewhere.
Oh, yeah. The thing. So the show, how it works is we want to do the show probably weekly. We're gonna try to figure out a time. Right now, we're doing this time because it seems like it's actually good for everyone, and nights like tough for people, including like myself, especially because Mark is West Coast and I'm East Coast. So
Hmm.
one of the issues is like people are usually busy at night or they're playing games, so they can't join us. So it seems like strangely in the afternoon is a good time for a lot of people. If not, let me know. The other thing is we will talk about a subject for about half an hour and take questions at the other half hour. So the show will be approximately an hour or so. And we'll also talk a bit about Battle Zoo. I do have a preview later to show you what the Dragon Book looks like. And then, we'll talk about other, you know, stuff related to the Battle Zoo world. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was what is game design? Because one of the fun things is that in Paizo, there's developers and then there's designers. And everyone is like, what the heck is the difference, including people in the industry? And it's different everywhere. I know it's different for
It's different in
WotC.
every
Yeah,
company.
every
It
company is
really
different.
is.
But you could at least talk about it from a Paizo point of view.
I
And I
can,
and they might have
but
different terms for it, but they still divide it up the same way. Like there's developers and there's designers. I know like Magic the Gathering has this. I believe WotC has it, and we have it. So there's
but
like
they're not the
they're
same.
not the same, but they do have a siloed like people who kind of do the numbers and the crunch, and other people who do I wouldn't call it fluff, but more like lore and backgrounds. And why don't you get into what in
Yeah,
how it works
and
for you?
even at Wizards or other companies, it's not always the same division
Right.
either. So at Paizo, the if you're a game designer, like I am the design manager at Paizo, at least for a few more weeks, overlapping with being the director of game design at Battlezoo right now. And that means that you build new games and entirely new game expressions. It involves a combination of skills and sort of game design things that other companies or even like computer games call game design. So you have to be able to understand the user experience of certain features, the math, how it all comes together, the feel, the concept. There's a lot that goes into it. For development at Paizo, it's a little bit different. At most other companies, there's a pipeline where design creates something and then development develops it and goes into the details. And at some of those companies, development are where they like stress test and find all of the possible feature flaws or loopholes or other issues. That is not what happens at Paizo. It's just a little different. And at Paizo, developers are kind of like producers of at some other companies of a product that starts from beginning to end and sort of outlines a project and gets people hired and gets it done. That's typically one that includes a significant amount of adventures or lore. And then a designer might come in later and look at the rules, which is sort of the opposite of other places where you might have a designer create something and then a developer comes in to tighten certain aspects. So that's how Paizo does it, but that doesn't mean that that is what is game design, what is game development. It's a good place to start for people who are familiar with me from my work at Paizo, but ultimately game design is looking into everything that goes into making a game that includes the math and the other things that are in the background, and that includes things that are on the sort of the play experience side at the table as well. And there's a lot of psychological aspects of game design that are not obvious if you're kind of more focused on looking at the math and doing a white room calculation. And I have no problems with those. I make them a lot myself. But sometimes there's unusual and counterintuitive things that you find out about actual gameplay experience that sort of belies what you expect from the expectations of the actual math or the underpinnings. And so game design is putting all of that together, and it includes lore and it includes rules, and making a game that that people want to play. And so that's sort of, in a nutshell, what is game design.
So how about this? Because it's still a little unclear even to me. I'll do a little game here, and the game is going to be I'm
Okay.
going to say what it is, and then you tell me who works on it. All right. So
Okay.
we'll say math. The math and crunch for say a combat, or the math and
Okay.
crunch for say, like
The
a
math. Okay.
core.
So the math and crunch for combat
Hmm.
at Paizo,
Right.
because of the fact that a particular combat in an adventure
Hmm.
is going to have been outlined by a developer,
Hmm.
then a developer will be the one who creates that combat and goes to math it out. If they feel there's something complicated about the math of it or something unusual, they may ask for the design lead to spot check the math on that encounter.
Okay.
But they might not. And so they're like, that is sort of what happens at Paizo. But the developer in this case is using the guidelines for encounter math that was created by designers.
So
So
right. So
if
the
you think of it as
designers.
that designers decide what Legos are in the set,
Right.
and developers can then build all
Got it.
sorts of worlds and like play sets out of
So that's
those
okay. That's
Legos.
actually the best analogy right there. So the designers create the Legos. Or sorry, the developers create the Legos,
Or
and
the designers create the pieces that are in the Lego
right
set, and then the
designer.
developers are like, let's make a giant castle
There
out
we
of
go.
these pieces And then there's like rules the designers have said of like don't
Hmm.
put too much stress on these particular pieces or other things like that.
Right. So that's actually why having a designer, or why, yeah, you're a designer, and I brought you in as that, is because something like monster parts, like
Yes,
like I came up with the general concept, and we discussed it, but then you figured out how to math it out, if you will. Like you figured out all the nitty gritties. I was just like, let's kill monsters and take parts, but then you
that's
figured
right.
out exactly
And I
how
had
it
had the
works.
same concept myself, so we crashed our concepts into each
Hmm.
other. We saw which parts stuck from
Hmm.
both of our ideas about what were the best parts of monster parts. That was very important.
Right.
And then yeah, I definitely went through the system math and built it. And to be clear, designers at Paizo also do development work
Right.
on rule book line books that may have a lot of design work that are in them. And developers at Paizo often have to do some degree of design work. And there's also freelancers who do some degree of design work as well, and being hired to solve a particular design problem. So
Hmm.
Paizo has a very robust and hybrid approach to dealing with design and development. Editing is pretty much always done by editors,
Hmm.
although if you're doing a design or development pass and you see an editing error, like you can fix it, right? But there's not like a formal editing pass that is then done by somebody else.
Okay. And then you obviously have, I don't know, creation of a class. Like you're making a brand new class. I presume that goes right to a designer at first.
That's going to be design.
100%.
It's going to be a design test. Now, like
Hmm.
on occasion, it has been in Starfinder classes have sometimes been freelanced out to a freelance designer who
Hmm.
was like not the job title of designer. Just like I said before, freelancers can do design tasks at
Right.
Paizo, but on Pathfinder that has not occurred, so it always goes within the design team.
So yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to even talk about is because it's fascinating to see the math in Pathfinder because some people call it Math Finder, but you haven't heard that
I
one
think people
before.
mostly called Pathfinder First Edition
Well,
Pathfinder,
yeah,
and
I've
there's a
heard it.
reason for that.
I've
There's a
heard it.
reason for that. I still have an Iron Fang Invasion game going in Pathfinder First Edition, and like we have a character whose animal companion has like a plus 68 to grapple,
What?
and like at one point we determined that pre-buff the animal companion had like plus 25.
Yeah.
So the buffs had provided 43 additional
You
bonus.
know what the
And
problem?
and that was in lots of small increments.
Yeah,
So you know
well,
what?
yeah,
I'm willing to agree that at the point where you're adding 43 in increments of 1, 2, and sometimes 4, that was probably a lot of math to
yeah.
get there.
There's a lot of math, but the point is that at least secretly behind the scenes, especially in I'd even say in second edition, like the math really kind of runs the game. It's like the math is the secret framework behind pretty much all these games. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's true in D&D 5th edition. That's
yeah,
true in
even in
pretty much
board
any
games.
edition.
Yeah.
The question is how much the math can get out of your way and do its job
Mm-hmm.
in the background
Right.
versus you have to do the math. And I think
Right.
in Pathfinder First Edition, because of the fact that you sometimes had, in the case of that grappling character, had like I think like something like 16 to 18 sources of stacking bonuses,
Mm-hmm.
some of which were untyped, which therefore always combined
Mm-hmm.
together. That actually was a significant amount of math that the player had to do every time because some of those bonuses he wouldn't always have, and some of them were even situational. It's like, oh, are you riding on the companion? Then it gets another +4. Um, it is so in that sense, there was a lot of math both in the system running things and that players had to perform. And it wasn't. It's like it's not impossible. Our group does it. We have a lot of people who really like math, but in a lot of other systems, and more so in Pathfinder Second Edition or D&D Fifth Edition or a lot of others, they still have a math framework that is doing a lot of work, but it
Mm-hmm.
tries to get out of your way a little bit
Right.
more or be very consistent so that you learn it once and can apply it anywhere.
Yeah, but that's actually the thing. Is like looking at all these systems, especially looking at D&D. It's very fascinating to see, and this is like a topic for another discussion. D&D first, second, third, 3.5, and especially fourth, the math was front and center because of its background from being, a mini war game. So math was there, and people liked the math. And then the revelation was with fifth edition, where math is totally hidden. I mean, it's there, but man, did they go out of their way? That not only is it hidden, they go out of their way to hide it. Like they really go out of their way to make sure it's not there and you can't find it. And then you have Pathfinder Second Edition, where the math is there and it's sort of hidden. I mean, you definitely could see it. It's dressed up very nicely.
The Game Master Guide generally tells you where it is.
Right, and the Game
so
Master Guide. Right, but if you don't want to use it or see it, you don't really need to. You don't need to worry about it. It's just there. And I think that's a nice balance personally. But I could also see that's what can turn off people because math is like, oh, I don't want to learn math. I just want to play a game and tell stories. And that's actually why board games work so well because in most times, at least if it's a good board game without a million bookkeeping, the math is hidden and it's in the game itself. Like the math is all part of the game mechanics.
Or you have little pieces that you're
Or you have-
collecting that are
right.
physical representations of
Right.
the counting, so you don't have to count.
Or the cards are part of the math equation, which is just randomization. But instead of rolling dice, you're pulling cards. So they
Or
do
worst case scenario, it's a scoring math that you have to do once at the
Right.
very end to see who
Right.
won, right?
Right.
That's about it.
Yep. So board games is fascinating because they have math as well, and a lot of their math is just hidden within the game. Uh, but and theirs
sure.
is probably the most elegant. And I
Well,
won't even
and
I won't even get into video
computer
games.
games are a good example
Oh, well.
of where you can hide
All the
an
math is-
infinite
yeah.
amount of extremely complex math
Yes.
because of the fact that you've got a computer just doing it in the background.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't even get into computer games because computer games are all math. That's all they are. And I can go in. My experience is I have extensive experience in the world of computer gaming and World of Blizzard and World of Warcraft.
Well,
and,
it's worth using your experience.
well, I'll tell you what
here
they
too.
used to do is when they would balance the classes in World of Warcraft, they had this. I'll give you some secret behind the scenes. They had this gigantic spreadsheet that had all the classes, and they had all this feedback. And they had it that they could change the numbers in the spreadsheet, and it would actually change the class live. That way they didn't have to code it all. And that's how they did it. There was someone whose whole job was to balance classes, and they would just go in and constantly change the spreadsheet, which would just, and anyone's played World of Warcraft in the past knows this. Is like the classes are always being tweaked, and it's like, oh, this does this, and this does like there's a million changes, and that's how they did it. They just did it through this little spreadsheet that just changed everything. But they're always tweaking the math. And nowadays, especially for like single player games, they don't tweak the math nearly as much, and you can't really tweak the math in a board game unless you do an expansion. So what makes sort of role playing games so interesting is that the math never stops because you keep adding expansions, and that's where you can break it. They're like, oh, that's OP. It's like, yep, you broke the math. It's like you made it. Someone doesn't. That's the problem. I think sometimes with some third party material is that if they don't understand or if the math is so well hidden that they just decide let's just make this really cool, rules and add it to the game, but then they don't understand the math behind the game and how it was balanced, then they break it.
I mean, that's something that can happen if you're not careful and if you're not
Right.
lucky. It can happen in first party material.
No, it can happen
too.
in anything. Yeah.
It can happen in any product.
Yeah.
Like there's a small, even in Pathfinder Second Edition, which I think has an incredibly good track record of not doing that. There's a small number of things that have come past, which are like pretty much flagged for errata, but they come out, and that'll happen if you're first party. That'll happen if you're third party. In some ways, it can happen more. It can happen more in certain situations for third parties, but it can happen more in other situations for first parties as well. So you wind up with different traps and situations that they can fall into.
So with that being said, what are you going to be doing in the world of Battle Zoo. I mean, it's basically you and me, and a few
Yep.
other core people. But just so people understand, like my company, which I build, basically Fortune 500 websites and technology solutions, is set up in a very similar way. As I used to have a big office in Manhattan and all that stuff, and then long story short, I was very close to 9/11 when it occurred, and then after that, I kind of changed my life and sold my company and moved out, and now I'm all virtual, and I've been virtual ever since. So I've been virtual for about 20 years. So my professional company is built with a very small core group, and then we bring a lot of uh, expert freelancers in all the time. I'm building this the same exact way. It's myself, Mark, and a few other core people, and then we'll obviously bring in freelancers to build out the materials. But obviously, someone like Mark is key because this is a whole new line, and we have very specific goals for this line, which Mark is aware of. That's going to be very different than some of the things you've seen out there. We're going in a very different direction, and you've probably seen it already. If you notice, a lot of our stuff is bright. We got a kind of a lot of almost silliness to it, but serious, like a silly seriousness to it.
I think
Um,
you've sometimes described it like Pixar, where it's
yeah,
bright and
Pixar.
when you look at it looks like that certain way, but then there's actually some pretty serious stuff that goes on in a Pixar film, right?
hmm it's Pixar and Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are the easiest ways to describe it because you say that and you're like, oh, I know what that is. Because Guardians of the Galaxy, bright, and they use tertiary colors. You know, they use a lot of purples and reds and magentas. I like those colors. We're just kind of going in a very different direction because there's so much grimdark out there already. It's like I don't feel we need any more grimdark. And you know what? Grimdark in a Pixar universe is freaking awesome because it's even scarier. It's much
Yeah.
scarier.
So we have a few different design goals for the line, and one of the
Right.
other ones is kind of flexibility and recognizing that you, the person who's purchasing a Battle Zoo product, are part of sort of the Battle Zoo design team and the sort of the Battle Zoo family. And so what that means is we know that you're buying this book because you think it's cool and you want to use it in your game, or maybe just read it for fun, but probably use it in your game. And so we like to pull back the curtain, give you an explanation of what we're doing, and give you sidebars and other places where we present options for how to use something instead of just like, this is the one way to use it. That's it. If you want to change it, figure it out. We're extremely mod friendly and kind of like the variant rules that I wrote in the game mastery guide for second edition, like free archetype and some of those other ones. The idea here is we give you variants so that you can do the one that is exactly what your group wants, and we try to explain what it means to be using each of the variants too. And that's something we want to be pretty consistent about, and is one of the other design goals of Battlezoo that's kind of a little different than what most people are doing in general, where you put out the one thing and like that's the canonical version of.
Yeah, I mean, we're putting out very modular designs, but yet in our own world, if that makes sense. It's so the whole thing is like, yes, we have all these monsters and they're part of the Battle Zoo world, and then we have this monster part system, and we have the Indigo Isles. But you know what? The Indigo Isles was built on purpose because if you want to take an island and put it in your world, it's going to be very easy. And we're going to build out the whole island so you can just take it as is. We'll have towns, we'll have cultures, we'll have cities. So you can just take it. Obviously, the monsters you could just put into your game. Monster part system you can put in and out. And then the dragons, obviously, dragon ancestry, you could just use it. If you want to use it, you can use it. If you don't, you don't have to. But we're basically building a combination, very, very modular world that you can easily take and put into your game or use in our game system, which we'll be
Right.
developing over time. And that's
And
that's
there's not going to be a lot of heavy, like, you have to use our world or else. It's all about modularity. And someone in chat, Insightful, has said that Monster Hunter is another example of a series that's colorful
hmm
and bright and at times cute, but that also can be a very heavy
hmm
series, and I think that's another apt comparison to the Battle Zoo aesthetic.
Yeah, and we've already been we're already talking about the next one. I mean, the today's the last day, by the way. RPG Superstar, today's the very last day, public voting. So if you have a monster or you want to help someone out that's your friend, or if anyone's in chat who's like, quick, vote on my monster, now is the time because voting ends tonight at midnight, and then it goes to the judges, and then the final winners will be announced March 15th. And by the way, it's a combination of both the professional judging and public. So neither will decide outright which is the winner. And then we're going to rank them. One thing I do want to mention is that we're going to take, there's I think 137 winners, but there's going to be more than 137 that make it to the next round because some of these are literally a difference of 0.01%
Yeah.
in terms of judging. So that's not fair. So I'm going to give more than 137 that go to judging. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, the good
there
news
could be some that get DQ'd
Yeah,
also
yeah.
for whatever reason. We should have some extras.
Yeah, we're gonna have extras. So the good news is more than 137 will make it to round two. Bad news is that doesn't mean you won. I'm just telling you that right now. But you might. But the
It
point
sounds like you have a pretty good chance of making it at least to
Yes.
bronze if you made it there, but you're not guaranteed.
Correct. The other thing is that the monsters, in the Battles of Bestiary, they're being put into the world directly. Like, in fact, all of the, I'm not giving anything away, but a little, all the gold and, no, sorry, all the platinum and all the grand prize winning monsters, or at least the families of monsters, are in the Indigo Isles adventure. And all the monsters in the Indigo Isles are from Battles of Bestiary or new. Every single one. The only one that isn't is sort of a cheat. Is there is skeletons, but
But they're a new skeleton that just used the skeleton
they're new
framework.
skeleton. Correct. They're skeleton.
It's technically a new stat block of skeletons,
Yeah.
but it uses a skeleton framework from somewhere else.
Yeah, but we actually even went so far because, and I'm not spoiling anything, like we didn't want to have zombies, so we have a new zombie. Like we have a new zombie type we invented. Kind of the way Husk was sort of a new invention that won. That's actually
right for
Husks,
the blighted plants.
Yeah.
That we always think they're undead, and then we
They're
check
not.
it.
They're not undead. They're not undead. I'll tell you one thing though. Those husks. Oh my lord, that is a good template because that thing comes in handy, man. That
They're
thing
creepy.
That is good. We got a lot of husks coming up. So, but that's the point. Is like the Battle Zoo world will all be interconnected, but you can take it however you want it. It's built
Yep.
so that it's in pieces. And
It's kind of like if you think of the Marvel universe where there's connections and cool things that you'll notice if you get everything, but you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
You can just watch one of the movies and it'll be an interesting movie or film to watch even if you didn't watch all of them. So it's pieces that you can use with advice for how to actually use it, whether or not you're interested in the world of Alucard. Like the dragons, they're going to be in the world of Alucard, but if you want PC dragons for your own game, there's very little that's in the book that you can't just outright take pretty easily into almost any setting, unless your setting says there are no PC dragons. That's one of the rules of my setting, in which case, you've catch 22'd yourself. There's nothing that we could have done.
so a few things. One, if you want to have your question answered 100%, just send a super chat. If you know how to do that in YouTube, we'll always answer super chats no matter what. Otherwise, we might get your question afterwards. Also, do like, subscribe. This is new. Hit the little bell if you want to know when we're going live. Right now, I'm doing it now, but I may change it. We might change it. And I'm going to tell you a secret, okay? The secret is that in the very near future, we're going to be doing sort of a build a monster workshop for Battle Zoo. I'm not going to tell you what that means, but if you guys like it, where Arcane Mark has done this, and we've done this on a few other channels where you make a monster with us, and you literally make monsters with our channel, with our tools, and help
And
us.
Arcade Mark does it with not just monsters. You can
Yeah,
make
yeah.
all sorts of things.
Well, first we're gonna start with monsters, but yes, because one thing at a time. But yes, Arcane Mark does a whole bunch of things, but he does like settlements and gods and worlds and planets and solar systems. I'm starting small. We're gonna do a
I mean, we
monsters.
didn't go quite that big, but we've had settlements, nations,
If you did
gods.
gods, I think the god counts for all of them because a god can make any of those.
Yeah, but a world has a lot more details than a god.
Okay. But anyhow, we're going to be doing that in the very near future. And trust me, you're going to want to be part of this because it's going to be cool. That's all I'm going to say is that we're going to make it that Battle Zoo in the world of Alucard is something that everyone can contribute to and be part of. So a big part, obviously, is the monsters from Battle Zoo Bestiary, and people like it because it's like, wow, that's my monster. It's now in the adventure, and it's like being made in Ancestry, and we're going to be doing cool things. Well, we're going to be doing that for everyone who listens to the show. Like, if you listen to the show and you're part of the show, then you will get a chance to.
And you can see how what Steven is saying ties back into what I said
Yeah.
before about one of the fundamental things, one of our tenets for Battle Zoo is you, the
Mhm.
person who's watching the stream, the person who's buying the books, is part. You are part of the Battle Zoo design team,
Mhm.
and we're working together to create cool stuff that's gonna work well in your game. So that's something pretty different that I don't think anybody's done.
Right. We'll talk more about that in the near future, but in the meantime, I do have I do have something for those who ordered the books. Got this in. Yay! Look at that. So that's the cover for the Battle Zoo Bestiary. Finally got the right. Actually, this side is wrong. But we finally got the color just right. It actually took a lot of tries to get this color just right because it's I wanted it to really pop. So it's hard to make really bright colors pop, but the really cool one is I got the special edition cover, and I'm going to zoom in real quick. But if you see, I actually have this beveled. So it's the gold will be beveled, and that's it. On the side, we have a little bit of gold. We got a little bit of gold there. You can see the gold. And then the back is actually the front of the other cover. So, and there's very little text on it. In fact, there's no authors. Look at that. Where's the authors? You got to open up the book to find out. But I know who wrote it. So this is the special edition. We have very few of these. So if you order it, you'll get it, and that's it. But we added this. I just added the bevel to the cover because I thought it was cool. And then look, you can see the inside. Ooh, look, reverse bevel. Yeah, okay, cool.
Whoa!
Whoa! All right,
More
so
bevels.
so that is what the books, they're actually being printed right now, which means when will we see them? I don't know because they're coming from China. They're supposed to be here in April, and then if you order just the book, you'll get it right away. If you order the book and anything else, we have to combine shipping because you don't want to pay shipping like 2 or 3 times. So you just have to wait a little bit. Now Mark's on board. Get to it, man. Get to it. Hurry up.
There we go.
Hurry
Well,
up.
they're gonna have to wait for April
Well, at least this
to
one.
get that first book. April
Yes,
is the cruelest month
I know. But the
for
PDF will
eating
be
lilacs out of the dead
the
land.
PDF is out immediately. As soon as the PDF is as soon as we're done with the 5e PDF, that will be out for Battle Zoo, and then the Dragon book. So the PDFs come out immediately, and then the VTTs come out very soon after. So this is what we got. So let's look at some questions. We got one super chat, so they get first. Oily
Okay.
Wright wrote, "Congratulations, Mark, on the new job. How do you feel about linear D20 probability versus flexible dice pool probabilities?" Wow,
All right.
that's a tough one.
So yeah, I feel like they are both useful for different sorts of fields. If you have dice pools where especially dice pools where you are either adding together and therefore you wind up with a normal distribution near the center. You can have a dice pool where you take the highest certain amount of dice, and each of them can get you a distribution depending on what you want. If you're rolling one die, one of the advantages is it's way simpler to do than any of those other ones because you don't have to add up a bunch of dice. You don't have to go ahead and take the maximum of certain dice. But one of the advantages or disadvantages, depending on what you want, is that it's very flat on the probability distribution. All results are equally likely. And that does mean that depending on how big the die is, like with the D20, there is a very wide variance on what you're going to see between like a 20 and a 1 or some of the other rolls. Whereas if you were rolling something like a large number of D6s, then you're much more likely to get something that's near the center of that distribution, even though it certainly can vary out a pretty decent amount. It's going to be closer to the center and not towards the edges. So it depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell. If you're trying to tell a story where people can pretty consistently do something that's in the middle of their band of competency, but they almost never do something that is like the maximum of their skill or the minimum of their skill, then you're better off with something like a normal distribution where you just add up a bunch of die together. If you want one where you're generally overall going to be pretty harsh on successes, but you get to roll a bunch and take the highest, and then something pretty bad happens if you don't get past a certain value on the die, then you do, you know, the roll bunch and take the highest. You can see that in like Forged in the Dark, right? Where you roll a bunch of dice and then you're going to take the one that's highest, but if it doesn't get a 6 something, it's not a total success, and if it gets below a 4, it's totally bad for you. So it really depends on what the feel of the game you're going for is.
Okay. Let's see. Is there any other questions? We actually didn't have any questions really. I'm looking. La,
Well,
la,
I guess we
la.
didn't solicit them a huge amount.
Well, now is your time to ask questions if you have questions.
Yeah,
And it can
if
be
you
about
ask a question, you can get a
anything.
question very quickly.
Well, now you can, but literally anything. I mean, actually, just some like general questions, but they're more jokes than actual questions.
Yeah, they don't have to be about what is game design, but they certainly can be.
Oh, so the one thing I did say, someone said, oh, they wanted to get the special edition during the Kickstarter. You can get the book. You just go to battlezoo.com. And even if you order the regular edition, you can upgrade to the special edition.
Oh, nice.
So
all that's on Backer Kit?
Yeah, well, just go to battlezoo.com.
Oh, okay.
Battlezoo.com. Battlezoo.com will take you everywhere. And you can order them now until the books get shipped out. You can still order them. And then once they're gone, they're gone. Because we didn't print that many of them, so we printed whatever we needed plus a little bit more, and that's it. So when they're over, they're over because they're very expensive to print. Because there's like
I guess that actually means there's a certain point where they have to stop ordering because they started getting printed, right?
Well,
because you only
yes,
printed a little bit more. So
if 500 people ordered it, I'd be in trouble. But I doubt that's going to be happening. So I'm not too worried.
Can you put a limit on it that's equal to the number of extra physicals?
Well, when it's no more, I'll take it off. That's it. When I run out,
enough.
it comes off the store. But right now, and it's like it has gold sides, like gold gilding on the sides. It has different art on the inside. Somewhat, I won't spoil it. It's something cool. There's a bookmark. There's a different cover. There's the gold foil and the embossing on the front. It's just cool. It's the cooler edition. If you want to be cool, that's the one you get.
So there's a few questions now.
Yeah.
So it looks like Winky Face asked, what are the Dragon Ancestry stat boosts? So the Dragon Ancestry stat boosts are dependent upon your heritage. So there's one stat that you can always have, and then your heritage adds a second option, and you pick one of those, and they have no weaknesses. So you can always, if you want, raise your strength, but you could also potentially raise something else depending on which type of dragon you are.
So
there's another question asking you, Stephen, where did you get that wonderful bookshelf?
Oh, I know. Is that thing amazing? I got that on Amazon, and I'm going to get a few more. And you can't see it in the camera, but at the top is all the Battlezoo books. There's like 5 up there. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 Battlezoo books on the top. Yeah, just Amazon. It's called forgot the name of it. Forgot the name. It's like a staircase bookshelf or something like that. But it is great because look how little room it takes and look how many books it holds. I'm actually that was pretty much my whole collection, and it was stacked up and it was like this high. on my desk and and it was in my shelving in my office. And I wanted something that was easily available, so I got that thing, and it is great. I think it's a tree bookshelf, but there's a million of them on Amazon. I can link it later.
Nice.
And then someone else
So
wrote,
the next question was, I'm a teaching artist
oh yeah,
from Ryan Bensinger. Do you have any experience in games and education?
let me think.
So,
I have quite a bit. Do you?
that's good.
Oh,
Um,
mine are easy. Um, I did Timon and Pumbaa. I did. Okay. Has anyone ever gone to Nickelodeon and have you ever played Little Bill or Blue's Clues? Any of those games, I programmed personally. I actually personally programmed 100 Blue's Clues games. This is back in my other life. Oh, and I did this thing. You might have heard of it. It's called Harry Potter. I did that, but it's kind of rare. You might not have heard of it. For Scholastic, I also strangely in my other part of my job is I use gamification methods for doctors because I do a lot of pharmaceutical work, and what we would do is use gamification for both booths at trade shows as well as teaching doctors information on various subjects. And I use gamification and cartoons, believe it or not. That's very similar art style. Like this stuff nowadays, you're like, oh yeah, everyone's seen it. But I was doing this 30 years ago. Like 30 years ago, this was, like breakthrough. But that hopefully answers your question.
yeah.
I don't know what you need to know about it, but, and I'm presuming you did
I
too,
mean, that
Mark.
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
In the class I took about like biomedical informatics, one of the key takeaways was that it's very difficult to get the medical establishment to adopt a new
Hmm.
system or way of doing things. So it's smart to use gamification or other
Oh,
techniques
yeah.
like that. For me, I've definitely like talked to Linda, who has really taken a more center stage on doing some of the educational aspects of Pathfinder about that because she's worked on Pathfinder and Starfinder Academy, which are for teaching new players or also kids about certain aspects of the game and using it also as a way for education. I know there's been messages and things about playing Pathfinder in libraries, and just personally in my own education, I feel like tabletop role playing games boosted my vocabulary. They definitely boosted my skill at probability, which,
Hmm.
given the fact that like when I was in high school, I won by like one question on like my county's math competitions, and if I hadn't had those extra probabilities skills from tabletop role playing games, there's at least one question I wouldn't have gotten.
Yeah.
So I think it made a big difference to me, and it
Yeah.
made a big difference in like for me in like getting into MIT and just in my life in general. And I feel like that games are very, very important in education. Let's see the next question. It says, do you have any personal thoughts or guidelines on when to include lines and rules that modify how rules element can be used about like ask your GM?
By
So I feel
Dustin
like,
Knight. I wonder who that is.
yeah, from Dustin Knight. So I feel like the time when you want to include that is when you have a rule and there's the question of like when does this apply comes up because you're not using a technical rules term for when it applies because you're saying like this applies for people who might agree with your who might disagree with your political views. You get this bonus or penalty or something, right? And so there's no way that you're going to write in the game book exactly what that means. And even if you did, people would probably argue over your explanation. And so at that point, the best thing to do is just for a group to decide together what it means, or the GM as the final arbiter to do so. And so that's why you put in as determined by your GM, just because you're acknowledging that it's a rule that uses interpretation in some aspect, and therefore it's kind of a release valve for the GM, who everyone knows when you read that is going to have to make some element of judgment because of the fact that otherwise, some players will be like, well, it doesn't say that you can exercise any judgment, and my judgment is that this penalty never applies to anything unless they specifically are anti me, or this bonus applies to everyone who doesn't completely agree with me.
And
So it's generally useful for the game system to sort of try to foster a good relationship between a group by being permissive about when to use interpretation, and also sometimes the game system can be like the strict parent towards when to do things so that a group can decide to be laxer. Whereas if the game system is super lax and just says anything goes, and then the group have to decide together, get together and be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this thing because it's causing issues, then that can cause interpersonal strife.
so one thing I wanted to quickly say, and then we'll show the preview, is that we do that a lot in our Battles of Books. If you get the Battles of Bestiary, I instructed Mark to put in as many sidebars as we can fit, because I was like, what about this rule? What about that rule? What about this rule? And we put in a lot of sidebars so that, again, you don't have to guess, and then you know how to use an alternate rule in the monster part system, such as what's that called? Not variable leveling, the um, the automatic level progression for your items. Mark, we had that rule in there.
Yeah, the automatic bonus progression.
Bonus progression.
Yes,
So, we have things like that. So that way you can figure out as a group or as the GM how to use it in your game. Because maybe
that's
you're
right.
using a rule and then you're like, crap, I want to add this really cool system, but it breaks because you're assuming that we're using the cool rules. So we're like, well, if you're
So we think ahead
right.
and we put that in for you.
So people came want to see the Dragon Book because we've gotten far on the Dragon Book. It's almost done, and I just got hot off the press as the border. The border made by the
Nice.
same designer who did all the dragons. So if I press this button, it should work. Let's see. Go Stream Deck. Ooh, look at that. Hey, look, we're
Let's see if
still
it
there. We're
works.
tiny. Look at that. We're all tiny. Hi. There we go.
I'll have
There.
to wait until I can see us because
Oh,
it's
that's
on a
right.
delay.
I'm on the live. I'm on the live thing. But
Yeah.
we
Wow.
have the design. You can see how we have this set up. This is preliminary, so the fonts and stuff will probably change. I don't know, but it's going to be very similar. This is a lore page, and you can see we went with the gold treasure motif because how can you go wrong with gold and treasure when you have monsters that are dragons? Because that's what they love. And then this is the lore page where you'll have a page of lore for 45 dragons plus a little bit of sidebar because I hate white space and you must use every inch of space. It drives me crazy when I see other books and they have like half a page of space in the bottom. Of course, making a book fit perfectly like Paizo does is nigh impossible, but I do it because that's how much I love you. But seriously, it's really hard to make these
I
books
really like the
fit.
border with the horde because it feels like that now this book is like my personal dragon horde. When I have it open, when you look around it and like everything that's inside is part of the horde, right? You've
Hmm.
got all this gold piled up and you've got everything in there. And you know, I think part of the reason that gamers like me like dragons is dragons like collecting things in hordes, and
Hmm.
gamers like collecting things in hordes. So this book is a perfect part of your horde with this background there.
Yeah, and then on the right side, that is where we'll have like the sub chapters. It's usually kind of a standard Paizo design, and quite frankly, that's the design I like. I mean, lots of people do different types of designs. Paizo, they're very well known for their designs. Their designs have like constantly, you know, uh, everyone's always saying how amazing their design is, and quite frankly, their designs are very good. And not just actually artistically, but their layout and structure is very
Yeah.
good. And so I made sure, I'm not copying, but we are using a very similar structure as their design because, quite frankly, it works. And I think it fills up the page nicely. And also interesting is that there's a lot of controversy over ragging the text around pictures of dragons and other images. And some people say it's harder to read, which is only funny because I'm so used to it now after seeing it in so many Paizo books for 10 plus years. I'm like, I don't even notice it, quite frankly. I'm like, I just read it, But I kind of see where that can come from because a lot of people like to keep the columns very nice and neat and keep the art separate. But I was like, throw it all together. It looks cool. So, anyhow,
Whatever works.
I know. So there you go. There is the picture. This is what will look like, at least in the lore section. And if you have any questions, let us know real quick. And then we got a little bit more time for a little bit more questions. We
So
have
there are a fair number of more questions. There's
yes.
one that's very fast and easy to answer. Edward Hansen wonders if dragons can have the ability to take human form, and the answer is yes,
There
they
you
do.
go. That was it. Next.
Then are there any all new dragon types in the book that like heritages for the dragon ancestry that we can say? Yes. Wild dragons, brand new
Yes.
from the world of Alucard, and that includes the party loving indigo dragons, the sort of wandering cerulean dragons, the exaggerating storytelling crimson dragons, and the gossipy amber dragons, the kind of wise but joking fools, the harlequin dragons, and one mystery wild dragon that we have not revealed yet because even we don't know everything about it yet.
Well,
So
I did mention that we did sign the contract with the famous person, and we're going to be meeting the
we've
famous
got a famous
person.
person who's doing it.
Yes, very soon, and this famous person will design the dragon with us, and then we'll go back and write it up based on their recommendations and talk to them via email, and then finish it, get images, and then we'll do another video of actually presenting the dragon and getting feedback and
Right.
see how they like it.
So
So
there was another question: are we going to get any information on the wild dragons during this stream? And the answer is yes.
you just
We
did.
just said a very small amount of information
There you
about
go.
them. Then there's a question: what is your advice on second edition Pathfinder to 5e conversion? I think what we've learned from the process here is that it's better if you plan on doing both for whatever reason. It's better to start with Pathfinder Second Edition because it's more expressive and it has more details in it. So it's easier to convert to Fifth Edition where you just remove that stuff. Whereas going the other direction, starting out, you wind up having to add more things, and you might realize that something that you started with doesn't mesh as well. Whereas it's a lot smoother from Pathfinder Second to 5e is like has been smoother. There's certainly certain aspects that you have to reconcept, but for the most part, especially with like monsters, they were able to keep a lot of the feel of the monsters in doing that
I mean,
conversion.
that actually goes back to the original topic, and that is game balance and game design. Is that
Mm-hmm.
Pathfinder Second Edition has very strict and very nice, elegant rules on monster design. That was so elegant and so well thought out that I could build a computer program that allows you to build a monster because that's how well it was thought out. I'm not dissing 5e, but 5e is more art than science when it comes to monster design, to say the least. So it's a lot easier to take a Pathfinder monster using a balanced, pre-existing system and then convert it. The other way is very hard. It's actually so hard. Yeah, I won't even try it to be honest.
Right.
It can be
So
done, but it's just too hard.
the next question is: do you prefer low level, mid level, or high level for play? Same, but for design, I like them all. I'm someone who played high level even in like AD&D or third and 3.5 and Pathfinder First Edition. It was very hard, and it took a huge number of hours to prep and to run practice simulations of battles based on my players' characters who were just because a lot of those older systems, you had no idea what the actual capabilities of a character was going to be based on their level. So you had to test it out based on knowing your players' exact characters. I just enjoy the spectrum, and I really like in Pathfinder Second Edition I can play at all the levels that I like, and I don't have to do that. I can kind of use stuff that's more out of the book, which excites me. What about you, Steven? Which do you prefer between low, mid, and high level?
It depends on the system because low level I think is fun, but like level 1 and 2 is really deadly, and especially I mean, like I played first edition where I played a wizard and I rolled a one on hit points and then another one and another one, another one. And when he was
Oh
fifth
no!
level, he had 5 hit points. So, yeah, it depends on the game you're playing. It's fascinating. I like usually mid-level play. I am finding in our podcast that I don't know if you consider 11th level mid or high level
That's
play.
probably
I know
mid.
people call it mid, but the thing is, most people stop play. The funny thing is, that's a question itself. Like, what's considered low, mid, and high? Because most people stop. The research shows at 10th level. So to them, high level could be 10th level, for all you know. And to us,
But
high
it still
levels.
isn't. That's how
It,
the research works. It still isn't high level, even though they stop there, because when
uh,
there's it's part of game design. It's very important. Whereas, like, if there's something that goes from 1 to 20,
right.
but you only go to 10, it feels very different than if it just goes from one
Correct.
to 10.
I
And
like
so,
like level five. Level five is always the sweet spot because then you get the third level spells. They get plus, especially in Pathfinder, you get the pluses to all your stats. Where's that level? Yeah, level five. It's just a good level. Like that's a good solid level. You could beat up the PCs as a GM and not worry about them dying in one hit, maybe two hits this time, but
yeah,
still,
seven's pretty good too.
yeah, yeah, around 5 to 7 is usually the sweet spot. Actually 5 to 9, 10. Whoa, in Pathfinder, boy, did they get powerful at 10th level. I might have to use the variable ability leveling, where instead of getting four abilities at level 10, you get one ability stat increase every level except for one. So maybe to make it gradual instead of all at once, because there was a big difference between level 9 and level 10. We got
Yeah,
time.
depending on your characters, you can see bumps at
Yeah.
particular things. Like if your party's full of casters, they might get really strong at level 7. It's very interesting and it's different. But everyone gets some pretty good stuff at level 10.
So Fabort said, "Can the dragons be used as balanced enemies too, or only PCs? They look like very
So
cool evil opponents."
in the rules of Pathfinder Second Edition, I personally recommend using the monster building system that Steven just praised, and I'm happy to hear that. Like Logan did a lot of the work on that, and I worked together with him on. It was basically the two of us on that system, and I like it too. I think it's easier and better in almost any case to use that than to build someone like a PC for your opponent. But you absolutely can build someone like a PC for your opponent in Pathfinder Second, and these dragons are no exception to that. You totally could. In terms of do we have like monster stats for all of them in this book? We don't. Many of them, like red and green dragons that you see here, the monster stats for the monster version of them that did not perform the special ritual that you see in that text is already existent in the bestiary. So it looks like Helen Savora asked, "You both aren't famous enough?"
For what?
As a question.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Are you, Stephen?
I was at
Who
one
knows?
point. I'm in Wikipedia. Um,
That's good.
I when I was doing gaming Steve, I was pretty famous when I was doing gaming Steve.
There you
That
go.
was getting a that was when there was literally like five gaming podcasts, and mine was getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of downloads a week. And
Well,
then I stopped doing it, and I don't get nearly that many for the new podcast. So there you go.
I guess it's good that you're on Wikipedia. My dad's on Wikipedia
Snoozeroos.
because he discovered that the Maryland state fossil did not exist in Maryland because
Cool.
it had the wrong genus and species name, and they had messed up and then had them change it to the correct one, which is a very weird reason to be on Wikipedia
So we
since
have
his job is not paleontologist.
So
But
Gusto Knight was any plans for Starfinder material? No, not right
nope.
now. You can convert it.
Um,
You can convert some of our stuff, especially the monsters and ancestries aren't that hard to convert to
Helen Savor
Starfinder.
asked, "What software did you use to
InDesign,
lay out this book?"
InDesign for pretty much industry standard. Actually, I don't know anyone who doesn't use it, and on top of that, the printing companies require it. So you kind of have to use it. There you go.
Oh, the question about the famous person was in response to the contract for getting a more famous than us person. It's like we're not famous enough.
Oh, they're way more
This person
famous.
has way more followers than
Way,
Roll for Combat, and
way,
and me
Way more
combined.
famous. Way
They
more
have like
famous.
they have like not
Let's
like
say, let's
over
say.
more than 10 times as much, right?
It's either the numbers are in definitely six figures, and if you combine it, maybe even seven. So they're
Okay, well then that's
very
almost 100
famous.
times roll for
Yeah,
combat
yeah,
then.
yeah. They're very famous. Ironically, probably a little more famous in the 5e world than the Pathfinder world and the gaming world. But you'll see. You'll see. It's coming up pretty soon. Um,
There you go.
well, we're coming to the end. We're actually out of questions and
Yeah,
almost
we
done.
actually we perfectly answered the questions and it's exactly noon.
That is. It is exactly noon. Actually, let's go back to the other view. Ooh, look at the die.
Ooh,
Look at the die roll. It's
spooky.
cool. Um, so that was our nameless show. Right now, Gaming Steve and Arcane Mark talk gaming. I kind of like it. I know people were like, it's too
I mean,
long.
it
I
could
don't think
be
it's
the
that
nameless
bad.
show. That could
I
be the name
know.
of the show,
Well, some
right?
people wanted us to talk, say, S&M do gaming. And I was like,
No, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
I saw a different person who said it could be like it could then be that but with like dungeon talk
oh,
because we're
yeah.
talking about Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder.
Yeah. Well,
And I also don't want to do that. So
yeah, yeah. So none of that. So we got to
um
figure out a name. We'll look at that.
there's a lot of possibilities.
hmm But we will try to do this. Right now, we're going to probably, as I said, do this Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. It seems to be a good time for everyone. No one seems to have any other times. And as I said, night is strangely not a good time because people are gaming. And on the East Coast, if we start at like 10 o'clock, people are sleeping. So it's sort of middle of the day. Who would have known that it's actually a pretty good time? If you have any suggestions for any other topics, we have a couple coming up. But definitely check us out at battlezoo.com if you want to order any of the books, if you want to get the special edition, which you can see here. Oh, look at that. It's so cool. Woo, look at that. Look at that.
Woo!
It's neat. Look at that. It's really hard to do that. It actually was a pain. Too new in bossing. It was so hard, but it's worth it because it's that cool. RPG Superstar ends today. And if you also want to check out the podcast, you can just go to rollforcombat.com. I don't know what happened, Mark, but ever since you joined us, the podcast, the listening has doubled, which maybe they're
Wow.
trying to find you because you're not on the podcast. But I was like,
I'm not on the podcast.
damn.
Do you want to add me to the podcast just in case they're gonna leave
One
after
day
that?
you'll come to the podcast.
Okay.
Well, have you? Maybe I'll have you DM for me one time or something. Um, But man, yeah, the podcast exploded after you got added
I
to the
will
team.
happily GM as long as I can do Theater of the Mind. But if I have to do a VTT, we'll talk.
Well, what we'll do is we'll do a combo. Is that you can GM and I'll run the game table. I've actually done that before because it's hard to do. It's hard to do. It's really hard to run a podcast and the VTT
Yeah,
and
that's what I was
GM.
worried about
Oh,
because like
it's
I've done
ridiculous.
things on VTTs, but it doesn't go quickly and smoothly enough that I can do that and all the stuff I like to do while GMing and be running a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
No, it's too much. So, and don't forget also, we're always on Discord. So if you go to the Roll for Comment Discord, like we're always there and always chatting. So you could
Yep,
always
and
ask
you
us
can also
questions.
find me in
Mm-hmm.
particular on the Arcane Mark Discord as
Yeah,
well. That is
that's right.
got me. It's got Linda. That was not a link because I messed up.
You
But
can't even send a link,
I can't even
and
send a
you're a
link.
moderator, and you still can't even send a link. There you go.
I think that
tiny.acc.arcanemark. You know, if you're really cool, I can even set up arcanemark.rollforcomment.com. Make that.
oh my
I
gosh,
could
dun,
do
dun,
that for
dun.
you. I could make
Um,
that easy. And then you have your show. Your show's tonight too. So you're doing double
yeah,
duty.
that's why I was saying when you said, "Are you surprised to be doing a show today?" And I said no because
Oh,
I
that's
already
right.
have one.
But your
I've
show is
already got
different.
one. You see,
Yeah, but
yes,
your
our
show's
show is
different.
tonight. And it's going to be a Linda's Adventures Shattered Star Part 5
Right.
with our group that are just constantly heisting these dungeons. And like, I think that this next dungeon we're about to do, we actually in one of them may actually fight some of the encounters rather than just tricking them into thinking we're here to help them with the other encounters and just getting them to mess each other up and sneaking past like we usually do. But it's a sort of a summary in quick action and recollections of when Linda ran Shattered Star.
Cool.
So it's a cool one, and that's going to be at 7.
All right.
Pacific, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern.
Oh, you see, you got to remember. You got to remember.
Yeah.
You're West Coast.
Yes.
You're the not as cool coast, but that's okay.
I mean, yes, it's warmer here, and it doesn't get as cold.
You'd be surprised it's pretty warm right now on the East Coast.
Fair enough.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week on Show to Be Named.